So you were asking about just generally tenor and bass instruction, and I mentioned my teacher was Bob Mead, and his son Harry Mead also taught me some snare drum at one point there for a while. Um, the key, though, starting out at least, is cultivating familiarity with the flourish patterns and how they interact with the rhythm patterns. If you teach the flourish patterns for the tenor drummers along with their accompanying rhythm patterns,
Mm-hmm.
that makes the jump from, well, it makes integrating the whole midsection with each other a lot more intuitive, because from the beginning you think, okay, I've got something going on up here,
Mm-hmm.
and while that's going on, I may or may not be actually playing with the other hand. That sometimes your both hands are up there flourishing away, doing their things and all that sort of thing. And if they're doing that, then obviously they're not down here banging away
Yeah.
on the drum. But that doesn't mean that somebody else can't be banging away on the drum. And so that kind of leads into interactive handoff exercises. So the bass drummer will play something, then the tenors answer it. Or the bass plays something, then the tenor one answers it, tenor two answers that, and tenor three concludes to bring it back around to the bass, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Just little runs like that become an exercise. But the thing that takes up the most time at the beginning is just the person, the tenor drummer, practicing that all day.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's only four different flourishes. Everything else is a combination of the four primary
Mm-hmm.
flourish patterns. So to start, Bob would say what you do is put on a movie and sit on the couch, and for the entire movie, just do that with your mallet,
Mm-hmm.
and practice that. And when this arm gets tired, then that arm goes and does its thing. When it gets tired, you go back and do that arm again, and go through the four different shapes of things, and just plan to do that pretty much every day. Whether you watch a movie every time or not, maybe may vary, but um, that's the thing that is most distracting for most people, and it's a lot like if you're teaching somebody to play the pipes.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, you don't put the whole bagpipe on their shoulder and tell them to play a whole tune all at once, right? Different people have different methods, but what I do is I plug the drones and have them play the chanter on the pipes, um, and start with the scale.
Yeah.
And as they're going, the first time at least, I'm standing there coaching them, saying, now you hear how it's just going, right? If we want it the whole way through, every single note. Doesn't matter if each note is in tune at this stage. What matters is that it stays the same for tonal quality. And as they play through the scale, nice and slow, they're not going, you force them to keep it slow. That forces them to listen to it. And while they're listening to it, they might not be paying quite so close attention to the actual blowing and the squeezing. At first, yeah, everybody has to think, okay, blow, now squeeze, then blow, now squeeze. But if some people, it's like two breaths and then they've got that and it's just running.
Yeah.
Other folks, it'll take them a day or two of working at it before they get that to where they're not actively thinking only about that. And playing something simple like the scale is a good way to get them to stop thinking about that and let just muscle memory and automation, all that sort of thing. And that can be supplemented with things like breathing exercises, you know, to sort of bolster if they're chronically underblowing things, then you got to recalibrate how much air they think they need to blow or inhale or all that sort of thing. So tenor and bass, similar ideas. You want them to not have to think about the basic stuff. The basic stuff for drummers includes not just the flourish patterns, but also the just physically carrying it. I mean, carrying a drum, a bass drum, is a lot. Tenor drum's still a fair bit, and certainly, even if the tenor drum is not as heavy as the bass drum, it's still lower down, and it will put torque on your lower back in a way that most people don't experience on a normal basis.
Right. Yeah.
So I would have the tenor drummers always carry their drum. Like any chance they get, they're always carrying it so that it becomes just a normal thing. There's not a point in practices where they get to set the drum on a stand.
Yeah.
The only time we would do something like that, is if we were actually tuning the drums.
Right. Yeah.
And even then, I'd hesitate to put them on a stand for that. I'd just tend to do it on a table, or better yet, put up 2 chairs that are, you know, so they get a solid foundation while still allowing the resonance above and below it.
Yeah.
So, so those are the types of basic things that parallel with piping. And from that point, start getting a little bit more specific about exercises that apply to that particular group of people. If you've got one bass and one tenor, then you'd have certain drills that they run. If you'd have one bass and 2 tenors, there are certain additional drills and things like that you get to run. So did you have any specific questions about it all?
You mentioned that there are 4 basic movements, right? What would they be? So I make sure that they practice those.
So let me just refresh my brain on these things here. Yeah. So they are the outside reverse flourish, the inside forward, like pinwheel, the reverse alternating, and the forward alternating.
Reverse alternating. Okay.
So if you picture,
okay. Right.
That's the forward alternating, and then reverse would be.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So those are the 4 shapes, and everything that you do, as I say, is a combination. Like the classic splitting the feather is not really splitting the feather so much. It's 2 outside reverse.
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
And another thing, in my time in the band in Argentina, the way the tenor drummers would sort of tie the tenor drumsticks to their, or hold them, right, was the way the military used to do it. And I don't think people do that anymore, which is basically, just have it hooked on the between the ring finger and the pinky, right, and you just have it hanging from there. You swing it from there and grab it in the air. And from what I've seen now is basically they still put the beginning of the, let's say, of the strap of the thread of the string on these 2 fingers, but then it goes sort of behind the middle finger and between, let's say, the index and the thumb.
Yeah.
So
putting an extra little twist in it can help as well, where you start it on the pinky, twist it, and then bring it up.
Okay.
And then bring it around. And that kind of anchors it on these 2, so that when I was first taught, you just put it on the pinky and then around the outside and then the inside. But now what they recommend is you twist it, bring it around, twist it, and then bring it around again. And that locks it in so that you don't have sticks flying off into the distance at the drop of a hat or something.
And another thing, what do you think of what's his name? Tyler Fry, is it?
Yeah, he's really good at what he does. I really like his sticks.
Mm-hmm.
He has some good educational videos as well. He and I have talked a couple of times when I was working at the school in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
He helped get things set up there. I'd say, though, everything that he does, he has a lot of experience at a whole bunch of different levels. In speaking with him, the impression that I got was that he views things strongly from the perspective of someone who plays at the grade 1 band level and who deals in large part with people who are playing at a grade 2 or grade 1 level.
Okay.
So
I see what you mean.
so he has a lot of good stuff. Just have to sort of bear in mind that that's where his mind is. And on the one hand, I like the philosophical idea that a person's potential is unlimited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that it is practically most appropriate for most people to pursue any skill set with that in mind, with that idea that their potential is unknown and they should keep pushing. They should not resign themselves to anything, because resigning yourself takes an inherent negative perspective on it. If, on the other hand, a person recognizes that they are in their 50s or their 60s or something like that, and they have a busy life and they love playing in the pipe band, and they've got a good solid dozen or so tunes in their repertoire, that they should and can continue to get better. The reality is that they should aim to be the best grade 5 pipe band player that they can be. They shouldn't aspire, I think, to play in a grade 1 pipe band. They shouldn't aspire to play in a grade 2 pipe band. If some part of them sincerely believes that they can play in a grade 3 pipe band, that part should be left off to the side and thought of as a possible thing for the future, but it shouldn't be a driving force behind their motivations. Because if it does, then they will start to get frustrated with their place in life.
Right.
And will stop enjoying being in a grade 5 band while being incapable of moving to the place that they want to be. So, and that's something that I didn't feel was tempered. It's been many years now since I actually spoke with him, so he may have progressed himself, on that front. But yeah, so why do you ask about him?
No, simply because precisely, in other words, I see he's very good, right? But my concern was, should, in other words, people who are trying to learn in circumstances which are not favorable, sort of everything's, I don't say against us, but nothing is in favor here. In other words, we don't have direct contact with other people who can sort of keep an eye on them and improve them, right? You start taking example from people who are at such a high level, right, that you try and do the things they're doing and you find yourself, you can't. And it's a little bit of what you were saying. One thing is that you try and aspire to be able to do it like them. And another thing is feeling frustrated because you see them on the video sort of, okay, and now we'll do this. And, all sorts of flourishing. And you're thinking, God, I'll never do that. Right?
It's like when you get a new piper and they hear somebody playing a really good, difficult Strathspey or something like that, and they think, "Oh, wow, I should be playing my doublings like that."
Yeah.
Right? No, you shouldn't. You should be playing your doublings as you're able to, and gradually, build the technique and the speed and all that sort of thing. Yeah, but yes, I understand what you're saying. What I would suggest is that the likely not the likely, the safest way to get them to develop, if they have the financial wherewithal for it, is for them to have lessons.
Yeah.
What happens for a lot of midsection drummers is that they get their instruction at band practice, if they get instruction.
Yeah.
That's not ideal, right? Under any circumstance. So the idea should be that they have lessons over in the course of the week sometime. And then when they go to band practice, they apply the stuff that they were working on. They might get some new music that is specific to the band, but they're not really learning how to play their instrument at band practice. They're learning how to become part of the core of drummers and the overall ensemble at band practice. So that would be my recommendation, is if they have the financial wherewithal to receive instruction on a regular basis, and the timing, of course, the time available. If they don't have the time available for weekly lessons, though, they probably don't have the time available for practice.
Yeah.
And at that point, I mean, they're going to show up, and the one time a week that they play their drum will be at band practice, which is going to severely stunt their potential for growth. So at that point, you'd need to look at them and say, okay, is there anything in your life that can change that would allow you to pursue this thing in a way that you'll actually enjoy it and be able to make progress with it? So I do offer instruction there, but there are I would say more economical options. I want to say Piper's Dojo does offer some drumming instruction in an automated type of form. The downside to it, of course, is that you're kind of relying on the student to catch their issues, which they wouldn't necessarily notice, I think, what is it? Rhythm Monster is another group of folks that do online instruction in an automated capacity. And I think they probably also offer live checkups and things like that, or checkups with a live instructor and that sort of thing. But yeah, some kind of human, ideally human and regular instruction outside of band practice is what you really want in order for them to feel like they have direction. At first, they'll live off the honeymoon phenomenon, right? They've got, it's something new, it's exciting, hooray! But that'll only last for a little while. Without the structure, it won't persist. So,
Yep. That, in other words, time is a big problem. It was probably more than the financial aspect. The problem that I do see about the Rhythm Monster, the Dojo U, is that they give online instruction, but it isn't thought out the way, like, for example, in Australia, when they started giving on radio instruction, right, where they'd be teaching a class of people, hundreds of miles away from the teacher and from each other, right, and the lessons took into consideration that there was nobody with a pupil in a position to more or less correct them, right. Here, the Dojo U and Rhythm Monster, they're thinking of people who want to take extra lessons, but somehow are in an environment where there is a band or there are pipers and drummers, right? So in other words, if you're teaching somebody in the States or in Canada, it's virtually impossible, right, not to have a pipe band within, say, 10 miles of where you're living, right? Because there are so many of them. Right? So what happens? You come here to Spain, or maybe someplace in Africa, and you teach online automatically, brilliant, but there's nobody in the environment, right, who can say, okay, look, this is what you got to pay attention to, careful with this, that you're not doing it properly, right? I mean, the only person, who can actually do that is myself, right? And I don't think, I'm really up to, not only up to standard, but also there's a lot of, I mean, just with the grace notes, right? And here I am trying to correct an old style, an old technique, right, for a new technique, which funnily enough is a 50-year-old new technique, right? I'm really like a dinosaur in this. Um, so I don't feel that I can help them, right? But I can't say, okay, fine, if you're taking these lessons, right, I'm here to sort of ward off any major mistakes or things that might lead you down the wrong path, right? So I've got to take that into consideration. Although the other thing is, if they're going to take the lesson, right, I could even say, okay, I'll take the lesson with you. I'll be present one way or another. Suppose if it's like this, I can, or even recording it, then I can afterwards sort of say, okay, fine, what he didn't understand, because there's the other thing. There is the language barrier. The bass drummer doesn't speak English.
Mhm.
And the kid
Well,
who's
that's fine
learning.
because I don't speak Spanish. So,
I'm sure there are ways to get around it.
well,
But
to be honest, on that front, it's not as big a concern for me because
mhm.
I have taught international students before. I've taught people that don't speak English or barely speak English
Right,
in languages that I have way less experience with than Spanish.
right.
So that's from that perspective, especially at the beginner stages, it's a lot easier to teach because you don't get distracted by the intellectual stuff. I mean,
Yes, yes, yes.
it's just kind of this is how you do it, and I'm pretty good at miming and grunting and it's communication. I mean, that's honestly, that was when I was teaching in Virginia, especially, that was a great experience because I was in the minority um, in that setting. The school had a student body that was 1/5 international,
Mhm.
and the pipe band. Hang on a second. I'll see if I'll grab a picture because I've got a picture of the pipe band. I'll show you. Hang on a second. I'll be right
Yeah.
back. The lighting isn't great on this picture, but
Mhm. Ha 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 ha. Right.
so most of them were Chinese, but there were some Korean, some Southeast Asian, and Islander folks. And it got to the point where I learned how to count in Chinese because it made more sense
Yeah.
just from the perspective of kind of bridging gaps and things like that. But there were lessons that I'd teach where I just wouldn't talk very much at all,
Mm,
and the talking that I gave was more from a chanter,
yeah.
chanter, you know, that sort of
Yeah.
uh, that sort of a vocabulary building things that we could ultimately communicate in the terms that I at least know for them. So, but I wouldn't be opposed to you sitting in on things if it became if it came to that point. Um, with the slight caveat that part of the transmission of knowledge and content and all that sort of thing
Hmm.
involves cultivation of vocabulary. And so it would be helpful for the student to learn the actual terms for the things
Hmm.
from the perspective of long term, not just communication with me, but communication with other instructors. You know, I mean, I could see at some point things start small, but hopefully they
Yeah.
build somewhere. And um, whether y'all ever came over here for a workshop or a summer camp or just
Hmm.
found one closer to you or sponsored one there, you know,
Yeah.
the likelihood is that the instructor is going to be an English speaking person.
Yeah.
And uh, if they're clever, they won't let that
No, it
hinder the
shouldn't be an issue.
experience. But still, it would be helpful from the student's perspective to have as much conversant capability as possible on that. So,
Hmm.
so there we are. Yeah.
Okay. I suggest we
Either.
let me think about this,
Okay.
right? Because it's going to be a big step, and I'd like to start on the right footing, you know, to get things more or less. Even if it doesn't work out with these two guys, you
Hmm.
know, uh, the experience would be at least good enough for me, in the sense of okay, when somebody else comes along, right? There are a whole bunch of questions I won't have to hopefully ask. You know, I've already gone through that experience now.
Sure.
So,
All right. Let's have a look at this tune, the finger
finger
lock,
lock.
of which we
Yes.
have spoken for some time, right? So the finger
Yes.
lock, according to who was it? Doctor. It wasn't. I don't think it was Archibald Campbell,
Hmm.
but it might have been. There's actually a video on YouTube somewhere of this guy giving a presentation about the finger lock and about its significance. And what he advocated was that this was something along the lines of a haka. And that they would lock their fingers like that
Hmm.
and had a chant that went that was
Right.
something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And so that's the gist. I mean, he has an actual full length video of it, but that's kind of the introduction that you get now
Right.
to the character of this piece of music. This is not a musically intricate, it's not a melodically intricate
Hmm.
piece, which means that you have to approach it with some aggression because it's a weird structure. It's 8 measures per line, and each line is repeated. That
Right.
means this is a long piece of music. Even though
Hmm.
there's only 2 lines per part, there's
Well,
still okay.
the other one, the company's Lament, was also 4 lines. No, yeah, four
No, it
lines
wasn't. No, no, no,
because
no.
of in the sense that the first line was twice, and the second, and then you had a second and third line, the second and third. So you'd have a total of 4.
Right, but how many measures per line?
Ah, no, 4, of course. These are 8.
Yeah.
Yes,
So this is twice as long as Company's Lament in its structural form, and that's not counting the fact that it has. Do you ever recall how many variations Company's Lament has?
Well, for one thing, it doesn't have Krum Loamach nor Tanlu Amach, so that's much
No,
less.
that's true, but it does have the ground and then G-ish doubling, right?
Yes.
And then, or at least variation one doubling, and then Torlua and Quinlua variations.
Right.
So what was that? Like 5 or 6.
It's
Yeah,
considerably
6.
short. Yeah, I mean,
Because it has 2 Torlua variations. Yeah, and it's a shul, sorry, not a G-ish. So it's got 6 variations. This has 8 variations.
Yeah.
And each variation is twice as long as any variation in Company's Lament. So you want to move through it, but pacing is an important part of it as well, because if you go too fast at the start, then you've got nowhere to go later on. And halfway through, you'll find yourself racing along with no way to pull back on the reins.
Right.
So we'll start off, though, with the beginning. And those 2 grips that we worked on last time should be played pretty aggressively. You'll start off, though, with a cadence. So on a practice chanter, you can start on just a nice long low A and then play the cadence. This is, have you ever played a cadence to B like this before?
I
don't think so.
No.
So this one's going to use something it's not really false fingering, but it's often taught as if it is. You start with a G grace note to E, and then you pass through a D grace note on your way to B, but you're going to lift both your D grace note and your B fingers at the same time. So it'll be like this. If I start on a long low A, just to give myself a place to start. Have a go at just that cadence there. Chi-o.
Whoops.
That's it. Yep. Now you'll follow that with 2 grips, so it'll be. You had a little bit of an extra flutter in the first grip there, but do it again.
Yes.
Good. And you do that twice, right? So. Go ahead. Then you have he and do, he and dun dun. There we go.
Okay. Oh.
So the first one actually gets you straight down to right. The second one you hang out on E.
Do that again.
Very close. So let's see here. Even though those two cadences, they're the short ones, cadences to low A, they're drawn the same way, they're not going to be played the same way. The first one gets you down to that low A. He and do, and make sure you go up to a B there. You were playing a low A. Up there.
Yes.
He and do. The next one, you hang out on that E for a bit. He and dun.
Okay. Right, I got that wrong.
You almost had it. Still closer, still closer. Think of it also from this perspective. We're working in 2-bar phrases, all right?
Okay.
So, on this first bar of this particular phrase, the low A is the first pulse, all right?
Mm-hmm.
By getting to that low A, we're giving it a little bit more time, which is good. In a 4-pulse phrase, the first and fourth are going to be the strongest ones. So that's good. You have he and do he, and by hanging out on this E here, that's not actually the theme note. So we're not actually giving a whole lot of weight to the theme notes which make up the pulse. We're just borrowing time from somewhere. And in pibroch, you don't ever really have to pay the time back.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like things have to add up quite right in order to make pibroch sense. So we're hanging out on that E. He and dun. All right. So the first low A after that E there, he and dun, is going to take its time getting to the final low A, which is the fourth pulse, which is the strongest pulse in the phrase. And so you don't want to rush into it, right? So that's why you've got that sort of retardando effect going on. He and dun, to bring you up to the end of that phrase. You want to give it a go, or listen to it one more?
Okay. Right.
Go ahead. Almost. Yeah, oh also, I see it has the fermata indicated of the first low A. Disregard that.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Almost. You had the first measure just right. Make sure you hold the living daylights out of the cadence at the start of the next measure.
Mm-hmm.
That was the closest one so far. Listen to it one more time. We're almost there. You could have done with just a breath more on the second low A in that second measure there. He and dun. There you go. That's better. Good. Now you'll have a chance to do that again in the next phrase. We're combining the first and second phrases now in the third phrase.
Yes.
So you have... Sorry, I'll get my brain on straight here.
Okay.
Almost. You kind of reversed them there. He-o, right? Just like in the second phrase, and in the first phrase for that matter, you're trying to get to that B. In the first measure, he-o-ro-ro. Then you hold the E in the second measure. He-un-dun-dun.
Okay.
Good. Now you're going to take that same timing that we just had in that second measure and apply it to the last phrase in both measures. So you have he and dun, he and dun, dun. Almost. You could go longer on that E, especially in the second measure. Yeah, that's it. All right, so I'm going to play through that first line, and then you can play the repeat of the first line.
Okay.
Pause there, since you paused. You're holding too long on those E's in the cadences.
Okay.
Get to the B's, get to that first low A, and then that will give you a contrast with the cadence in the fourth measure.
Okay.
You almost had it. You had it for like the first 3/4 of it. The final 3 cadences in the line are going to be played like the cadence in the fourth measure, which is the long E, right?
Okay.
All the cadences to B are going to get you to B. That's the point of them, right? So you're still tending to hold just a little bit longer than I would like. So it'd be so you're hanging out on the B there for an instant before bro bro, right? As opposed to, you don't want to have ro ro, right? It's ro ro. Okay? So that's the first line for you. You've got a full recording of me playing that full first line. There'll be some things that are new in line 2 that we'll cover next week. Do you have any questions about stuff in the first line for this week, though?
Yes. What are
Yeah.
the 1, 2, and the 2 in brackets?
Those are footnotes, and what they, if you turn the page to, let's see, did I send you a copy of this, or are you looking off of a book?
No, I'm looking at the copy, so I
Right.
can't see any second page.
That's
Okay.
fine. So what it says is Angus MacKay has a D grace for the 1. Angus MacKay has a D grace note following the E cadence note. But since that's the only place in the ground where such a note occurs, it is suggested that it may be a clerical error. And then the 2 was Donald MacDonald has a single high G grace note on those notes. So there is some discrepancy, and perhaps could be seen as consistency in the Donald MacDonald setting, because he only puts it as a G grace note in the same place in the phrase, in 2 different phrases.
Right.
So that is less likely to be a clerical error and more an intentional thing. However, I personally prefer to play it with all the cadences.
Okay.
I think it gives you the opportunity for some expression of subtlety, which is not actually a normal thing in a lot of pibroch. Most pibroch, when you find cadences, they're very specifically at the ends of phrases, or the beginnings of phrases perhaps, and as a general rule you'll find them in the same places in all the variations. So like in Company's Lament, let's see, I'm pretty sure there was an example in there. Where was it? Not Lament for the Viscount of Dundee. Right, we don't have it there, so that's fine. Think about Struan Robertson's Salute.
Yeah.
Right? You've got those he-herons at the ends of every line in all the singlings.
Yes.
And then in the doublings, you have something that is not a he-heron at that spot, right? And that's a normal sort of standard use of cadences in the construction of a tune. This, if you glance down the page, there are not cadences elsewhere in the tune, right? All cadences are in the ground, and for that, if you look at it, even line 2, every single measure has a cadence starting it. So, to me, what that says is that the composer wanted those cadences to be used as a melodic feature, not necessarily as the theme notes themselves, but as a feature that is characteristic of that particular ground. And if you eliminate those 3 cadences
At the end.
Yeah, because there's, well, if you look at wherever there's a 2, a footnote 2 indicated, right? That only takes out 3 cadences of the 16 or 32. So 6 of the 32. And to me that seems kind of like, why would you do that? Why would you? And asking that question, I haven't been able to come up with an answer. So until such time as I come up with an answer, I'm just going to play it with the cadences as written there. So, but that does make it a little bit more complicated, but only at the beginning. So you've got to figure out, where does that cadence actually put its weight as you're playing. Right? In the first 3 measures, there is a certain amount of symmetry to it when you consider that the first 3 measures are all getting to the theme note. Even though they're different types of cadences, right? The first 2 measures are the same type of cadence, but the third measure is a different type of cadence. They're all getting to that theme note, B, B, A. Then the 4th measure, you hang out on the E of the cadence, And then it's like it's not quite a mirror image, but working to the back, you're getting to B first, but then for all three of the remaining ones, you're holding on to that E. So it's not exactly symmetry, but it is balance.
Another thing, in other words, the fermata, in this case, there are four of them, right? We're actually playing that note sort of a little bit shorter.
Yes.
So would it be possible to think that the fermata in this case is not so much, because originally it's supposed to be, until the instrument stops vibrating or you run out of air, sort of thing. But here it's sort of like working in both directions. Either you shorten it or you lengthen it, but it's saying this part doesn't affect, let's say, the mathematical values of the notes. It's just simply, more of a feeling than an actual say, okay, this is an 18th or a 16th note or whatever it is, right? It's just saying, okay, this note is flexi note.
Yeah, it's to the discretion of the performer, essentially. Now, what I will say is, what they're trying to do, bear in mind that the people who put the versions on paper that we see here were trying to do was create a written version of the tune that could be played by someone who didn't know how to play the tune and was not being taught by someone who knew how to play the tune.
Right.
And part of the difficulty with that is one of the methods they use is metering of the music. That's why they put that 2/4 at the start of the line. They think that it all ought to add up to 2 beats per measure. And it's not going to, right?
Definitely.
But they have to follow their own rules and make sure that the actual note values within the measure add up.
Yeah.
But they still wanted to be able to show where the pulses were as you were playing through it. And additional to this, or perhaps because of the way they've written it, which I think is the likelier thing, is there are people who will play it differently. There are people who will play it as you might suspect that it should be played if you just played it off the page, which is to hold the low A.
Yep.
And then make up the difference on the next two notes. So what that does, though, in my mind, is it makes it a little bit boring, because then every single cadence in the line is exactly the same.
Right.
That means you're always going down to that note, always down to that note, always down to that. So every measure takes on essentially the same presence from a pulse pattern perspective. And not that you couldn't play it musically that way, but to me, it's not as interesting. And besides all that, that's why the way I was taught it is to play it where some of those cadences are getting down to the notes, some of the cadences are decidedly not getting down to the notes, and there's a distinct difference between the two. And that contrast adds some beauty to it. So anyway, that's the way you're being taught, so that's what you get to live with. Any other questions?
None. Look forward to next lesson.
Sounds good. Have a good week.
Thank
See you later.
you. Same to you. Cheers. God
you.
bless. Bye.